The Pope obviously passed away a few days ago. Are you planning to attend his funeral? I'm not currently planning to attend his funeral. Vice President JD Vance shocked the nation by openly crying while disclosing an emotional reality about Pope Francis, whom he had only met in dramatic circumstances. Do you feel like one of the final officials to meet him before he died? I didn't realize he had less than 24 hours left when I saw him. Over Easter, they had a fragile tenderness that few saw, but Vance never forgot. He spoke about the Pope's frailty with admiration and pity, hinting at a darker truth. Exactly what did JD Vance discover that shook him so? Lay learn. JD Vance's touching Pope Francis homage. In a rare emotional moment, Vice President JD Vance shared his heartfelt reaction to Pope Francis' death. This is especially striking because Vance had just met the Pope a day earlier at the Vatican's exuberant Easter celebrations. The brief meeting left an impression on him. Vance spoke with a heavy heart of his great elation upon seeing the Pope, which was quickly overtaken by sorrow. Vance saw the Pope's failing health throughout their meeting. He shuddered as he remembered how fragile and ill the Holy Father had looked, a thought made heavier after the sad news. A passing idea became a terrible realization that something serious was impending, a silent warning disguised in the Pope's weakened presence that made the loss worse. Vance expressed his condolences on X, formerly Twitter, as a public person and grieving believer. He wrote, "My heart hurts for the millions of Christians worldwide who loved him so." He spoke with grief. This was an unpolished political statement. It showed a deeper grief and a greater comprehension of Pope Francis's worldwide effect. The Pope's power is beyond the Vatican and any nation. He broke down barriers and united people of various races, ethnicities, and nationalities. His message of compassion, humility, and oneness touched many, creating a sense of shared humanity beyond religion. Francis inspired a world starved for hope, as Vance's homage showed. Vance and his family's Easter weekend trip to Rome deepened this experience, not a usual sightseeing tour. The pilgrimage was emotional and meaningful. Within the Vatican's holy walls, he met a feeble yet compassionate guy. Vance got a few precious minutes to share his joy at seeing the Pope, maybe unaware of how sad those comments would soon turn. Even though they were worried about the Pope's health, their brief meeting was filled with smiles, tenderness, and a deep understanding. A unique, ephemeral encounter brought two people from very different backgrounds together at a sacred crossroads of faith, leadership, and vulnerability. Pope Francis' generosity and humanity during that meeting left an unforgettable mark on Vance's heart, made worse by the suddenness of what followed. JD, what was spoken in those final intimate moments? Pope Francis and Vance talked privately? Just wait for JD's last private talk. The Vatican meeting Vance had may have been more surprising than imagined. Vice President JD Vance recently gave a highly emotional and personal tribute to Pope Francis after his death. A day earlier, Vance met the Pope in Rome for one of his last personal appearances. Vance posted on X, formerly Twitter, that his heart goes out to the millions of Christians who loved him. He was sick, but I was glad to see him yesterday. Someone who had experienced something profound, which few could imagine, spoke with weight. Not simply the timing, but what happened behind closed doors made their encounter special. Vance and Pope Francis held a lengthy closed-door meeting following the public welcome, according to Vatican sources. The interaction went beyond ceremony. Insiders described the talk as intense, confidential, and emotional. In this private encounter, Pope Francis, conscious of his rapidly diminishing health, reportedly gave Vance a series of classified documents that he requested to be kept safe and only utilized when necessary. Vance appeared touched as the Pope recounted the significance of these documents, according to witnesses. What was inside them appeared urgent and responsible, shaking even the assured vice president. As he gave Vance secrets that could affect the church and beyond, the Pope's voice was weak but steady. This was an overwhelming trust and burden for a fresh Catholic convert. Vance wiped tears from his eyes in the hours after the Pope's death, deep in meditation, wrestling with his sadness and the great responsibility he now carried. As he reflected on the confidential talk and the files in his hands, he realized this was not a weight he anticipated facing so soon. According to insiders, Vance grieved from both loss and the immense anxiety and uncertainty of what he was safeguarding. His memories of the Pope's remarkable interaction with him fueled his emotional tempest. Recalling the Pope's early COVID homily, "This message of courage, optimism, and resilience had affected Vance to his core, and now, in the wake of the Pope's death, it seemed prophetic. Some who know what was spoken behind closed doors feel a heavy, almost sacred stillness. Vatican insiders suggest that the secret files could affect significant church decisions or disrupt its political or spiritual foundations. JD is central. Vance was picked for unexplained reasons. JD and Pope Francis. Vance, reconciling faith and politics. Vice President Vance and Pope Francis met in context. It occurred amid serious and well-known tensions, mainly over immigration policy, which the Pope had always criticized, particularly the Trump administration's hardline approach. Vance understood what he was getting into when he converted to Catholicism in 2019. However, he spoke at the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast in D.C. His February tone was non-defensive. He explained it to a rapt audience. No argument from him. He wasn't arguing with himself or the Pope. He emphasized courteous communication to overcome divisions rather than intensify them, not just political posturing. In an age when political and religious disagreements often divide people, Vance's approach showed a deeper understanding that open, honest, and courteous dialogue is essential. He took the harder way of humility, listening, and viewing even stark disputes through the lens of shared humanity. Vance volunteered personal information at brunch. He said he prays for Pope Francis's healing daily since learning about his poor health. I didn't just say this to appear pious. He spoke with genuine concern and empathy for the Pope as a worldwide authority and as a fellow human confronting bodily weakness and uncertainty. Vance was originally surprised by the Pope's forthright critique of immigration restrictions. It was a political issue near to him. Without letting offense grow, he looked further. He saw that Francis' harsh comments were masked by a genuine care for everyone, especially the defenseless and displaced. This perspective change was powerful. Vance portrayed Francis as a shepherd who cared for millions of souls rather than a critic to be ignored. This made harsh words seem like acts of love, challenging but anchored in the deepest calling of compassion. Vance's Pope talk changed after this realization. No political calculations or phony tributes were in his speech. Raw, thoughtful, and human. They stressed the importance of compassion in public discussions, especially around immigration, faith, and national identity. In a time when ideological disputes pull communities apart, Vance's reflections reminded us that we can and must treat one another with kindness, even when we disagree. He emphasized real people, real lives, and real misery over slogans and political achievements. His quick but impactful meeting with Pope Francis. It showed how powerful genuine dialogue, not argumentative dialogue, can be to open the heart and expand the mind. Vance, and probably everyone listening, were reminded that real leadership goes beyond policy and power. It's about showing compassion, respect, and dignity to everyone, no matter how different. Vance seems to carry that meeting's lessons into public life. He appears to carry forward that dialogue's ethos of respect, humility, and a refusal to simplify even the most complex human issues when addressing spiritual communities, debating policy, or addressing national crises. Thus, Vance's words and deeds were not just an homage to Pope Francis, but also a living illustration of how the Pope's teachings affect Catholics, leaders, and citizens worldwide. It reminds us that authentic spiritual leadership can transcend religion and politics, touching hearts and changing conversations everywhere. Maybe there's more to the story, an undiscovered Pope Francis secret. Stay tuned, because what's coming will make you question everything. Vatican kept Pope Francis secrets. Pope Francis gave his final Urbi et Orbi blessing at St. Peter's Basilica on Easter Sunday, April 20, 2025. Though feeble, the Pope spoke with passion, appealing for peace in conflict-torn regions, like the South Caucasus and Western Balkans, and worldwide disarmament. Though frail, his voice conveyed intensity, as if his words were a last plea for a broken world as well as hope. The blessing, given hours before his death, sparked suspicion. Was this his death, or a cryptic message? Did the Pope realize his time was limited in his closing moments? If so, what truths was he teaching the world? This final blessing recalls the 1139 Pope's prophecy. Legend has it that Irish Archbishop St. Malachy got a divine vision with 112 Latin mottos, predicting the papacy of every pope from Celestine II to the last. Foreboding Patris Romanus. Rome will be destroyed by Pope Peter the Roman in the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, according to the final entry. Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, isn't named Peter, but many believe his papacy figuratively fulfills Malachy's vision. First Jesuit pope, first from the Americas, and named Francis after the patron saint of the poor, his reign has been marked by obstacles, the church split, scandals, and a quickly changing world. Do these signs portend a spiritual collapse of the Catholic Church? Vatican vaults include St. Malachy's full text, which Pope Francis reportedly read. Why was this only recently revealed if he did? This mystery includes the third secret of Fatima, 1917 prophecy from the Virgin Mary to 3 shepherd children in Portugal. 2 of the 3 mysteries were exposed in the 20th century, but the third wasn't until 2000. It described a white bishop climbing a corpse-filled mountain and being shot. The Church believed this was a reference to the 1981 Pope John Paul II murder attempt, but several scholars and former Vatican insiders disagree. There are rumors of a second, unreleased secret that could cause a major church split. Many wonder if Pope Francis was the bishop in white referenced in Fatima's third secret after his death, immediately after his mysterious Easter message. Did this vision foretell the future? With their complex corridors and guarded doors, the Vatican's secret archives reveal tempting hints about its past. Over 50 kilometers of shelving in these archives may contain ancient writings, missing gospels, and forbidden predictions. Pope Francis declassified Pope Pius XIV's WASU2 archives in 2020. Some think this was a distraction, since deeper secrets persist. These archives include powerful literature that even popes hesitate to read. Say, whistleblowers, the Council of Nicaea encrypted Inquisition dispatches and apocalyptic prophecies. Did Pope Francis evaluate these items in his final year? Was his last Easter message a hidden warning from a past we never knew? Beyond these uncertainties, Pope Francis faced personal attacks. The Pope narrowly evaded an ISIS-linked assassination attempt in Iraq in 2021. The Vatican discreetly buried a second plan against him days before his return to Rome, according to leaked documents. This warning came from the Vatican or outside forces. The Pope decreased his public appearances and gave more serious, reflective addresses after these episodes. Could he have thought he was borrowing time? Why wait until his last Easter benediction to impart such a significant message? Pope Francis' political influence in the Vatican is much more intriguing. Papal power battles have long plagued the papacy, including Pope Francis's 2013 election. The first Jesuit pope was elected after a 2-day conclave amid religious disputes. According to insiders, Pope Francis was unexpectedly elected after a political war between traditionalists and reformists. Was his selection meant to oppose the unseen church and other forces? His final statement, "The wolves are among us," suggested betrayal. Who were these wolves, and did they silence him? Let's examine how Pope Francis' complicated image affected JD Catholic conversion of Vance. Could the Pope's comments have influenced Vance's politics? Find out. Pope Francis's covert influence on JD, the Catholicization of Vance. JD was 39. Vance is an unconventional vice presidential choice. Vance has been a Marine, Yale Law graduate, best-selling author, and political rising star. Despite his public successes, his greatest startling and personal shift didn't happen publicly. It happened indoors, away from cameras and campaign trails. It's the story of a man who went from atheist to Catholicism, guided by Mama's calm, tenacious faith, not scholars, priests, or politics. Vance's childhood was difficult in a poor, addicted Ohio town. Although churches were closed, organized religion rarely affected his household. Mama had faith in her fiery instincts, and unshakable trust in God, right and wrong, and that a person's soul mattered more than their circumstances. She didn't speak theology or memorize Bible scriptures, but her fiery morality, taught through acts rather than sermons, seeded a seed in Vance that took decades to grow. He quit high school to join the Marines, and eventually earned degrees from Ohio State and Yale Law School. By any metric, he succeeded. He had risen from poverty to American success. But when he looked at his life, he felt empty. Success, stability, and fame appeared. However, he was deeply confused, knowing that none of it answered the larger problems he had attempted to overlook. Vance later called this era a spiritual hunger in his stunning article on Mama and Becoming Catholic. A dramatic conversion moment, a flash of light or sky voices were not described. His transition was slow and hard, a reckoning with himself. His inquiries were tough. Did his accomplishments make him a better man, or just a polished version of someone broken? If achievement wasn't enough, what did he want? Political ideologies and intellectual discussions didn't provide answers. They were inspired by Mama's unshakable integrity and belief that life had purpose beyond status and wealth. Vance craved more than self-improvement and emotional restoration. There was something greater. He wanted a moral framework that accepted human vulnerability but demanded accountability, forgiveness, and transformation. A search for spiritual roots led him to Catholicism, not because it gave easy answers, but because it reflected Mama's demanding, merciful faith without notice. Catholicism didn't excuse failure or immerse people in guilt. It offered mercy, discipline, truth, and grace, elevating individuals. Years of soul-searching led Vance to declare his faith at 35. He was baptized and confirmed at Cincinnati's St. Gertrude's Priory. It was not a cultural or casual choice, a deliberate, profound choice. Vance joined the church to yield to something better. Confession, sacraments, community, and grace's humility were required. He found more than comfort. He was discovering a new path for his life, family, and future. In a candid 2022 EWTN interview, Vance revealed how Catholic principles had changed his personal and public life. He spoke about the church's duty to preserve life, elevate labor, and uphold morality in a world that increasingly rejects it. He said Catholicism offered him a base strong enough to survive modern politics, a tradition that challenges, disciplines, forgives, and hopes. Another silent factor influenced his choice to join the church. Pope Francis, whom Vance had encountered throughout his search, exemplified a distinct Catholic leader. Vance was moved by Francis's humility, kindness, and daring advocacy for justice in a society where public figures are often cold. The Pope's emphasis on mercy, his willingness to tackle corruption inside and outside the church, and his respect for human life made Catholicism feel alive, real, and needed. For a guy nurtured on the margins of faith and hardened by poverty and ambition, Vance became Catholic not merely for doctrinal reasons or historic customs. Mama and Pope Francis taught that faith may be harsh and delicate, founded in tradition, yet flaming with love for the least among us. Thus, as Vance prepared to enter the national scene, he had already made his most fundamental decision, which would define his politics and soul. JD Vance's conversion to Catholicism wasn't abrupt. Daily existence shapes the slow rediscovery. Vance didn't return to Christianity by miracle. The daily struggles of being a spouse and father drove him to seek something greater. Vance understood he needed a stronger foundation to teach him about love, sacrifice, patience, and life's unpredictability as he managed family life. He returned to Christianity with new eyes. Vance didn't believe in rule-following Catholicism. It was about living and finding meaning, courage, and grace in everyday times. He noticed the change at home initially. His non-Christian wife saw that he was more patient with their son and forgiving when things became tough. Vance later realized that she saw grace quietly working in him, not as a thunderclap, but as a daily metamorphosis.